Welcome to LivBytes, the podcast by Leventis, where we explore the intersection of business, technology, and innovation. I'm Craig Jonkers, your host, and today's guest is Erik Larsen, a 25-year veteran of IT and digital transformation leadership in the food industry. After leading large-scale ERP and technology implementations for some major producers in the industry, Erik made a leap 3 years ago to start Transform IT, a consulting firm specializing in fractional IT leadership, supply chain consulting, and software implementation. He's one of the most knowledgeable people I know in the industry on this topic today. The FSMA Rule 204, which is by the FDA, put out for Food Safety Modernization Act, and it's reshaping how food companies track and trace product through the supply chain. Erik, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Craig. Good to be here.
Well, good. Well, Erik, let's start at the beginning. 25 years in the industry, mostly with produce companies in the food industry. How does someone end up spending a career at the intersection of technology and food supply chain?
Well, food people in the food industry were in my family. So I also enjoy the farming aspect. I enjoy technology. And when I first got started out in my career, I actually worked on the produce sales team for a grower shipper and really enjoyed it. Did it while I was going through college, and it just felt like a good fit for me. And then as time went on, I kind of moved more towards the analytics and the technology side of things, but really just found the food industry, agriculture industry to be a very dynamic and fast-paced industry, and it just seemed to fit me well.
Well, good. Well, most of your career, you've been working from the inside of companies, leading large teams, global operations. And what do those experiences teach you about the food companies and how they actually operate versus how they might think they operate?
Well, as they always say, the devil's in the details. The higher up you go in the organization, a lot of times there's some ignorance as to what's really going on in the organization from an operational level, or an operational efficiency level, I should say, where you walk into an organization, you can see that, yeah, the job's getting done, but is it getting done, in the most productive way?
Yeah.
And as well as information flow. Is the information flowing? Does the organization have the information they need to make the right business decisions each day?
Well, 3 years ago, you made the decision to launch Transform IT. Kind of what brought you to that realization that this was the right time to do that?
Well, Craig, I've been in the industry now for almost 30 years. And I've had largely the same role for a good portion of my career, where I've been head of IT for several large grower shippers in the U.S. While I enjoy the head of IT role, it's very broad, and it ranges from data analytics all the way to cybersecurity. And I think for this change that I wanted to do, I was maybe getting a little bit selfish and really just wanted to focus on what I really truly enjoy in the technology realm. And that's really data and operational efficiency, getting the software systems to work well, be so involved in some of the other technical aspects of running an IT shop, such as, the networking side.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Erik, let's jump right into the FSMA 204, because that's something that a lot of food companies are hearing about and maybe not fully understand. Set the stage for us. What is the rule? What's the name of it? And why does it exist?
All right. So the FSMA 204 is what the FDA considers their final rule. And it's a progression on an original rule back in 2002, the Bioterrorism Act. And essentially let me take you back through the years briefly. So we've got the Bioterrorism Act, which really required participants or trading partners in the supply chain to share traceability information as one component of it throughout the network, throughout the supply chain. And as time went on, around 2010, 2011 or so, not only were we then exchanging the traceability information like lot number and quantities and pack dates and stuff like that, but in 2010, 2011, there was a requirement to label information. So it's not just on the shipping documents or the bill of lading, but you'd have to have a label on the cases, which utilizes GS1 standards It has a barcode on it, on the case. It has production date, lot numbers, where it was grown. So a lot of information about the pedigree of the product was required to be displayed on the cases. Well, the FSMA 204 takes that another step further, basically. And what that does is it's really trying to digitize a lot of that information. So that information that you see currently on the case label is not always communicated through the supply chain. It may be from one trading partner to another, but not all the way through. And this rule is meant to digitize that so it's easier. And the reason why is that currently when the FDA conducts an investigation, they claim it takes them about 35 days to conduct an investigation. And that's largely because of several things. One is that not everything's digitized. So they may go to different trading partners in the supply chain and trying to trace back and conduct their investigation, and they'll find that they need to say, all right, we need to trace this, lot of lettuce back, romaine or whatever back. And what they find out is that at each partner in the supply chain, they use all different sorts of information as far as lot numbers, different paperwork. Some have it only on paper, some have it communicated on EDI or have it electronically. And a result of all this non-standardization of information takes a lot of time for them to go through and really paint a picture of where this product came from and potentially where else has it gone in order to pull it off the shelves and save lives. And so what the FDA is looking to do with this rule is to take that from 35 days down to like 5 days as a result of data standards and digitization of the information. What they're asking for now is that any person in the supply chain, when asked upon an investigation from FDA, they need to provide an electronic sortable spreadsheet, like Excel, for instance, where they can upload it to the FDA site and it has all that information. And then the data standards that they're looking for are a traceability lot code and traceability lot code source, which is like one lot number that is used through the entire chain at each node or each trading partner in the chain. So they have some standard identifier for a particular product as it goes through the entire chain.
Well, that sounds interesting because I'm just thinking through everybody has their own proprietary number. And if they do have an investigation, how are they linking that and connecting those proprietary codes back to the original source? I can imagine that just takes a extensive amount of time. So I know that the rule, speaking of dates, it was supposed to be this past January, 2 months ago, and then they ended up pushing it out. It sounds like they pushed it out 30 months because they were hearing back from people in the industry that there was coordination challenges up and down the supply chain, as well as technology gaps. Can you talk about that and their preparedness?
Yeah, when the rule was first released in the original date, it was an opportunity for everyone in the industry, and the retailers, I think, really kind of took the first step in it. And as they started having discussions about how are we going to get this done, maybe off the top it seemed like it wasn't going to be that bad, but as they got into it, in order to digitize the information and have it correct, it needs to be at a granular level. So in order for them to be able to track that information at a granular level, they quickly realize that they're going to have to increase what they scan. Historically, a lot of these organizations and retailers basically had focused down to the lot, the lot of produce. So they could say, like, if someone was recalled, they could say, well, it might be, product off of, 5 or 6 lots here. And that would be their response to FDA. Well, now they're looking the FDA wants a lot more accuracy in that and granularity. So in order to do that, they're having to revamp their entire operations from receiving to shipping, where in the past they would just kind of lump lot level and pallet level items. Now they're having to break it down and track inventory by the case. And that has really affected the operation, especially at the retail level and the volumes they do. They have to really be able to do this without crippling their business. So that was brought up, and the FDA has agreed to delay by 30 months the implementation. So that allows the industry not just to put together a quick solution, but to provide and put together and assemble a proper solution that truly brings solid traceability to our industry and to our consumers.
Well, it's It's interesting from the retailer side or the grocery store side, like you said, they might have their processes in place as you move from pallet tracking down to the case level tracking. But when you start looking back down the supply chain all the way to on the supplier side down to the field, that's probably where the weak link in the chain is. So many of them aren't digit, digitized yet and don't have those capabilities or systems in place. So I can see where that would be a big challenge for them.
Yeah, and I think, the biggest challenge there is that when the FDA wants to conduct this investigation and get that electronic sortable spreadsheet, they're going to want that within 24 hours of the request. And that would be in the request of maybe the retailer, let's say. Well, all that information going all the way back to where the product originated from at the farm, all that information has to be pulled together and reported within 24 hours. And many small farmers today are still on pad and paper. A lot of them are not digitized. They don't upload their information to any sort of SaaS software program, or exchange it. A lot of it is pretty old school, and especially for the smaller farmers. And it's putting some pressure on some of the distributors and co-ops and such to be able to get that information and have it so that they can quickly report it to FDA fast.
And you mentioned EDI earlier, electronic data interchange. Do you see that going back to like the distributors? Is that where it really starts? Because it probably doesn't go back to the lower farmer level. eh,
Yeah, exactly.
Industry.
So it really all starts, according to the rule, with the initial packer. So whoever is initially
Okay.
packing the information, they're responsible to get the farm and field information together, and then they need to keep record of that, and then they need to share that with the next trading partner, which might be a distributor or even a retailer. And from that point, they would then preferably send an EDI message, which would be an 856 document, which is an advanced shipping notice with all
Mhm.
this traceability information on it, to their trading partner, to the next level in the supply chain. It's not required, but it's necessary, especially as you get with larger volume retailers and such. They are insisting that, and they should, that they get this information electronically so they don't have to manually enter all this information. So that's really what's driving this EDI communication. And EDI is really chosen because it's kind of the current media or method of communication today is EDI through purchase orders and invoices. So for most organizations, it's a matter of just adding a new document to their already set up EDI infrastructure. And then, maybe best case scenario would be utilizing EPCIS, which is a database scheme of exchanging data in near real time with all this traceability information on it. But for today, we find that EDI is the most practical way and universal way to send this information through the supply chain.
All right. And I know EDI has been around for many years. So hopefully a lot of people have that in place and or can adopt it very quickly. So you mentioned those FDA sortable spreadsheets.
Mhm.
Walk me through that. How do you actually get started for somebody that's listening to this? They might be behind on getting ready for FSMA, or they might be ahead, but they're working with other suppliers down the supply chain. Tell me more about that sortable spreadsheet and how they get going on it.
Yeah, certainly. So I really recommend the sortable spreadsheet. Like if you don't know where to begin as far as making sure you're good to go with traceability ready or FSMA 204 readiness, that sortable spreadsheet format's a great place to start. So the FDA is not prescribing a particular template to use. They just want the data. They want
Uh-huh.
the information in a sortable spreadsheet. They do have some templates that you can download that you can use that they support and they prefer, but they're not requiring any sort of format. And I recommend you creating basically what this sortable spreadsheet is, if we can imagine an Excel sheet, and maybe you would have different tabs, at the bottom, you'd have a worksheet tab for receiving, another tab for transformation, and another tab for shipping. So basically you would take maybe a lot of finished product that may have, take a sample of what you sent out to one of your customers and do a trace back on it and record that all on that sortable spreadsheet that you're drafting. And then make sure that you have all the key data elements that the FDA is requiring, which 90% of that stuff's on the bill of lading today. It's all the elements of information on a bill of lading today, with the addition of primarily a traceability lot code, which is that lot code that's shared across the supply chain, as well as the traceability lot code source, which is who set that traceability lot code. And if you're able to, so you'd have like purchase order number, sales order number, customer name, if you're thinking of your shipping tab, who it went to, where it was shipped from, what, your warehouse, where it's going to for your customer, quantity, traceability lot code, product information. And then, you would have that for each of those tabs. So receiving would be how you got it from your supplier. Information would be your pack or production runs, where you take your raws, like, great illustrative examples like a bell pepper or stoplight pack. We've seen those in the stores, the red, yellow, green.
Right.
You may get each of those from a different supplier. And so you got to be able to track all three of those components, for the finished product. So a sortable spreadsheet is a great way to start for you to kind of whiteboard out, so to speak, what you are, what information you have and what information you still need to get.
Okay. And I know the next step is to really have a written traceability plan in place as well. Can you talk to us about that and what a good one looks like and what the retailers and people along the supply chain actually need, and not just checking the box, but something that is going to be helpful for everyone in the supply chain?
Sure. Yeah. So FSMA 204 is requiring a traceability plan that the FDA will probably request if they investigate and ask you for information. They're wanting a traceability plan. And many companies out there right now have a traceability plan in place or a recall type procedure or plan, but the FDA has some specific elements that they want in this traceability plan. So more than likely, you're going to have to at least revamp your traceability plan or revise it to have this additional information in there. But basically what they're looking for is they want you to describe how your company identifies items covered by the rule. Like how do you know that this is on the food traceability list, or maybe not? Include the details of who is collecting and storing the required information for these FTL or food traceability list items. Identify who in your organization is responsible for generating that sortable spreadsheet. Describe how you will keep the specific location of fieldback product, which is the TLC source, which we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what systems will be used to generate the sortable spreadsheet. All this information they want to know. What document types and identifiers will be used. So document types could be bills of lading, pick tickets, stuff like that. And identifiers would be maybe purchase order numbers, traceability lot code, and then where the data and documents are stored. They want to know what systems are keeping this data, and they're requiring you to hold on to the data as it appears on the bill of lading for 2 years. So beyond your shipping date. So you do have to retain that information for a couple of years in the image of it was when it shipped. So if you have the same product code but change the name of the product code, you need to make sure you have everything the way it was when the item originally shipped. So that's creating definitely some work for the data team to get that where it needs to be and have the proper information stored.
Good. You mentioned technology just a few minutes ago again. Talk to me about the role of technology and what it's playing. We've talked about EDI, but what other kind of technologies are in play here that help manage this process?
Yeah, well, I think the other two that really come to the front of my mind that a lot of companies are looking at now is, they're looking for ways to automate the tracking at the case level. And so, we're seeing a lot of studies in RFID technology as well as IoT. So both RFID would be to be able to track the product and its whereabouts in a warehouse voyage, on a transportation ride, and same with IoT. And there's opportunities to combine this effort with your quality monitoring. your cold chain monitoring and such. So a lot of companies are looking at really trying to leverage this technology to take care of both their traceability needs, but also their quality needs.
Yeah. And the IoT's Internet of Things, so that's not necessarily one package.
Mm-mm.
It's a variety of
It's a
technologies that
full
are
solution.
available. Okay. How about AI? AI is a big component, big topic these days. How have you seen AI being used in this process to help retailers and suppliers manage this FSMA requirement?
Well, I think they're wanting to find ways to machine generate information on product coming in and going out without having to
Hmm.
scan every case, although that's proving to be very difficult. But AI for FSMA 204 is probably a tough nut to crack, I think, right now. I think AI has a lot of use in other areas of the industry and in business, in agriculture, from crop yields, customer demand, demands, supply demand, forecasting and such. With FSMA, a lot of research is being done right now to see how this information can be put in play with the least amount of operational impact.
Hmm. Right.
Between now and 2028, these companies are trying to figure that out. But balancing cost, operational effectiveness, as well as visibility, and trying to gain additional benefit from their investment of this 204 compliance.
I mean, to me, Eric, it sounds like it's a good practice. It's a requirement from the government, but ultimately it's going to help you operationally improve.
Well, I think so. I think, several different levels. One, from the consumer level, it increases transparency, should increase trust in our food system. From the profitability level, if it's done appropriately, it could potentially keep profits, with saving profits, with being able to reduce inventory errors. Our industry, I've run across a lot of organizations and companies that, they have a lot of inventory write-offs,
Hmm.
and being able to further track this information can help with inventory write-offs. It can also help with ensuring that your inventory turnover is accurate. First in, first out, or first
Right.
expired, first out is being held. And the reason that can be enhanced is by having this digitally tracked versus, just manually tracked in a warehouse. A lot of these warehouses, when you get in there, they're packed, and these pallet racks are packed 4 or 5 pallets deep or more, and it's sometimes hard to really know for sure, what the first, if FIFO or FIFO, to
Yeah.
send out. So I think this will help that as well, and ultimately reduce claims from the customer.
So, Eric, in your role with Transform IT, how are people leveraging you? I mean, some people probably are well down the path on FSMA compliance. Some people might have started, but not really sure where they are. And some people haven't even started. So, how can you help them?
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a step back here to explain a little bit more and add some context. When I left my head of IT role a few years ago, working for a grower shipper, since I've been with Transformant, and have had this organization, I've spent a lot of time with retailers. I've actually been sitting at conference tables at retailer organizations planning FSMA 204 implementations. And that has opened my eyes to a whole new dimension on our industry. And so now I feel that I've got the whole breadth of the produce supply chain from farm to retail. And I'm able to get in there, and the FSMA specific services I can provide to someone is to go in and perform a gap analysis, which is a very
Hmm.
detailed report by area. So I'd go in by, check out your receiving processes, your transformation processes, your shipping processes, but also your IT area, and do a very detailed gap analysis on where you're at and what the gaps are for both FDA regulation, but also the gap analysis for what your customers are asking for, because many retailers are going beyond what FDA is asking for, and they're asking for of their customers. In fact, some retailers are even asking their customers that provide products not on the food traceability list to have that same compliance, because they're investing all this information, all this time and effort into these systems that they want to improve their overall inventory accuracy. So they're placing more demands on their suppliers. So what I can do is I can provide that gap analysis. Then what I can do is, if we want to go further, I can provide a workshop to train employees on what FSMA 204 is, what the current industry landscape is, and also help create an implementation plan for what needs to be done. And then also just be around as an expert on call through
Mhm.
retainer services. That's, I think, where I can add value to my customers as it relates to FSMA 204.
Well, it sounds like it's not just an advisory role, it's more of a hands-on, getting down into the
It's
operational side.
absolutely hands-on. Yeah, it would be an on-site gap analysis, and that's the only way I feel really to do it properly is to be there on the shop floor and really see what's going on.
And it has that technology component, so it kinda leverages your years of experience leading IT organizations. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I think the ERPs, the big systems that people have, probably some of them are okay, but some of them probably are not gonna be as detailed as what is gonna be needed to satisfy FSMA.
That's exactly right. And a lot of these ERP providers are updating their systems now, but it may not be completely appropriate for everyone. And we all know ERP updates are costly.
Yeah.
And changes to ERP systems, it may be an interesting business case too to bring on a traceability solution to handle this. It might be cheaper and easier than running it through ERP. So these are all important questions to ask. I think it's a case by case situation, but I think it's important that you look at all the available options out there before you make a decision and move forward in a particular direction, whether you're going to update your ERP system or you're going to utilize a third party, most likely SaaS type solution for your traceability.
That sounds like wise advice. Do you have any other advice as far as what you see people are doing well and maybe where some people have made mistakes, especially as it
Yeah.
relates to technology?
So over the last couple of years, the meetings I've sat in with my clients, I think the biggest thing that is the biggest eye opener for my clients is that they feel that they've got it under control until we start digging into the gap analysis, and then they realize, didn't realize that. And
Mhm.
it turns out to be, something a bit more involved that needs to be addressed than what they originally thought. So, earlier I gave an example of the traceability plan. A lot of people I go into say, oh, well, we already have a traceability plan. Okay, but does it have these components to it? Oh, no, it doesn't. So just off the cuff, people are like, I think we're fine. We've got that all through our ERP, but you need to make sure that everything's covered for both the FDA's requirements as well as your customer requirements.
Well, that's good advice. I know that when I was in Washington a couple weeks ago, we were talking to members of Congress and the Senate, especially on the agricultural committees, and we were talking to them about template steel and Buy America and just really supporting the can manufacturer and the processors across the industry. A lot of good conversations come up. Where do you see things with clients as it relates to, the congressional laws coming out, the new farm bill? Do you see any more impacts or anything from the FDA coming out between now and 2 years from now when the law goes into enforcement?
I think it's going to be a lot of, it may sound like it's 2 years away, it's a long ways away, but it's really not, because what we're seeing with the retailers right now is they're looking for some of the suppliers, even right now, to start putting some pilots on the calendar. Every organization in the supply chain needs to be able to take the time to look at really how this is going to affect their operation and hopefully benefit their operations. It is a best case scenario, obviously, but avoiding it crippling their operations. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to take some time to really get through that and get that to where you're in a good place, as well as making sure that you're satisfying your customers' requirements, making sure that you've got everything in place that your customers are asking for. Now, I will say that most of the retailers that I see out there, it's a similar request. So that's good, but it's definitely something you need to prepare for and be able to handle and start some pilots pretty soon.
Mhm. So where do you see Transform going in 2026 and beyond?
Well, I think 2026 and beyond, I think, a lot of what I do is I originally developed Transform It to be a fractional CIO, which is
Mhm.
basically a CIO for hire or IT director for hire. So One of the reasons when I left also was I've been very active in the produce industry. I've chaired a couple of groups and actively participate in the industry. And I really see that a lot of the small to medium-sized organizations don't have what they need technically, nor can they afford a full-time seasoned IT leader to run their organization. And that's really the genesis of why I started Transform It, to be honest, is to be able to provide that to folks that I know in the industry and organizations that really need that expert advice, but they don't really maybe have, it in the budget to have a full-time employee for that.
Right.
So I definitely see that as the long-term kind of bread and butter business, so to speak, of what I'm doing. Although I will say for 2026, 2027, and probably 2028, there's going to be a real strong focus on FSMA 204. So it'll be the preparation, getting to the point where July 20th, 2028 comes along where it's the new date, but then post support after that too,
Right.
as with most implementations, you've got your development, you go to go live date, and then there's a period of refinement afterwards, and kind of the second tier or second level priority items will then get addressed. So I think that's going to keep me pretty busy for the next couple of years, and already seeing a ramp up now of people wanting to get started with FSMA 204. So my advice would be, if you're thinking about it, I would try to get hooked up now with a consultant and before the rush is in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for the folks, our listeners of LivBytes, how do they reach you? How do they follow you and your company?
Sure. Well, I guess the best way to reach me is Erik Larsen at transformitonline.com is my email address. They can reach me by phone, 919-396-0757. I have a website, Transform IT Online. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I periodically put some posts up there as well. So those are the best ways. And through you, Craig, you and I stay in touch all the time. So if any of your customers hit you up, you know how to get a hold of me. So.
Absolutely. We're both on LinkedIn, so feel free to go out and ping or DM Erik or myself, and we'll be glad to sit down with you and talk to you about what an engagement might look like or what a discovery. And if there's any technology needs, Leventis is always here to help with those as well. We've been working in the food industry for over 20 years now and been working with Erik a good chunk of that time, probably close to 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So that sounds great. Well, again, thank you for being on the episode of the show today. It's been a really engaging discussion. And for our viewers out there, please reach out to us if you have any questions. And if you'd like to see any other LivBytes topics, we have that on our website, leventis.com. And we also have a YouTube channel that you can go out to YouTube and look for LivBytes or Leventis and be able to find. So again, thank you, Erik, for being on the show today. And thank you, listeners, for participating and listening to our show today. And we look forward to many more discussions in the future.